gaining ground has always been much less important to the Russians than destroying the Ukrainian forces. And this is a problem we have in the mentality of the United States Armed Forces. You and I have seen this in action. We've got to go out there and gain ground and then cleanse the ground behind us of all potential enemy, when the real focus should always be the destruction of the enemy. Once the enemy's forces are gone, there's not a great deal that can be done to stop you from doing anything. That's where the Russians are right now. They've destroyed, for all intents and purposes, the Ukrainian armed forces, and now we're going to ship more things over there. Who's going to use them? Who's going to be trained to use them? Well, that's a question nobody answers. And remember that 40 to 50% of everything we send over there ends up on the black market. If they can do it, they'll do it. I mean, we've got people running around with Javelin missile systems in Mexico in the cartels. So God knows where half of this equipment ends up.
Yeah, we don't want to find out the hard way. You mentioned there about this 1%. That was actually Ambassador Whitaker, who said that Russia hadn't made any progress, so really we don't need to worry about it. Here's how he put it.
In the last 18 months, Russia has gained about 1% of Ukrainian land. I mean, they're making no success. They're losing thousands of soldiers every single day, and way too many, private citizens in Ukraine and the big cities are being injured. So I think this is a great next step in finally ending this war. But again, if Vladimir Putin wants to continue to fight on the battlefields of Ukraine, the United States of America will sell Europe armaments so that they can be used by Ukraine to defend themselves.
Do you think they actually believe that these weapons can help Ukraine defend themselves when it hasn't worked in 3.5 years?
Well, I met Whitaker in the green room at Fox when I was in and out of that place, and he's a very nice guy. And he may be informed enough or credible enough to make decisions or sweeping pronouncements about legal matters. At the time, I think he was the acting attorney general or something. But he knows nothing about military affairs, and he's simply reading from the script. You know, I think there was a statement, Russians are losing thousands of people a day when he's out of his mind. That hasn't happened for at least 2-3 years, if ever. I mean, they've never taken those heavy losses on every day in this war. It's the Ukrainians that have done that. I don't think he has any idea what ground truth is. And I don't think he's really interested, because he was appointed to that position to say whatever President Trump and the administration want him to say. So I wouldn't attach any significance to anything the man says.
You know, the problem is with it is, though, there's, and we'll see how much of a problem it actually turns out to be. But of course, people who watch Legacy News, they hear him, you know, the UN ambassador, and he's got that imposing figure, and he's got a good projection of voice. They hear that and they go, okay, well, it must be true. That, along with the other highly qualified 4-star General Jack Keane.
This is a major turning point, Maria, in the relationship between the United States and Russia, and also the United States' relationship to the war itself. I mean, frankly, President Trump has tried for a very long time, several months, to get a diplomatic deal with Putin just to simply go to a 30-day ceasefire, and could not get that. And he recognizes that that's likely not going to happen unless he takes some pretty tough action. And that tough action begins with the weapons and the ammunition. And clearly the thing that he wants to do, get these weapons in the hands of the Ukrainian military to protect themselves, to help successfully defend against Russia's offensive operation, which they've been doing remarkably well at, but they need to be strengthened. And secondly, and in particularly, protect the citizens of Ukraine who are being every single night attacked through the air.
I mean, Doug, come on. We're just simply asking for a 30-day unconditional ceasefire of the guys that are in charge. He's literally talking here like Trump is daddy, talking to some, little teenagers who aren't acting right. He's giving him all this time and he won't make a deal. What do you make of it?
Well, it's more hubris and self-delusion. But this is not new. If we go back to 2022, and this is in the summer of 2022 or early spring, I remember speaking to someone who was in Mar-a-Lago, and this issue came up, and how are things going? And they said, "Oh, this is really great." And I said, "Why is it great?" Said, "Oh, well, the Ukrainians are winning." I said, "The Ukrainians are not winning." "Oh, yes, they are. They're winning, and they're going to win this war. We just need to support them, and this will be over in a few months." And I said, there is a snowball's chance in hell that the Ukrainians are going to defeat the Russian military establishment. The Russians aren't even organized and mobilized to fight yet, and they're doing quite well. Well, we know that was all nonsense, and so we're listening to more nonsense. This is another one of those turning points that's going to turn out to be extremely disappointing. Back to our earlier conversation, what happens in 50 days? I don't know. President Putin is in Kiev, and maybe somebody from the president's entourage will fly in to talk to him in Kiev, or perhaps he's on the Polish border. There's this beautiful city called Lvov. In German, it was called Lemberg. It was under Austrian rule for about 130 years. It's a magnificent city. Perhaps they should have a meeting there in 50 days because the Russians could be there. This is all disconnected from reality.
And unfortunately, we have to remain disconnected from reality because now we're going to shift over to Europe, where we have NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte talking about how Trump's thing, if Keen there was talking, it's a turning point. Mark Rutte is saying this is a really big deal.
What's your takeaway from your meeting today and that announcement and how significant it is?
This is really significant. So last Thursday, I got a call from President Trump. He said, "Hey, Mark, we really want to ramp up the support for Ukraine when it comes to weapons." And then this morning, I was in the White House preparing for the meeting with him. And he said, when it comes to the sanctions, clearly we have to take the next step now. And he can only dialogue once, so he has to take this step by step. I totally understand that. But he was really, I think, irritated with his last phone call with Putin, who is not serious, it seems, about getting into peace deals, to peace negotiations.
So let me ask you, Doug, because Mark Rutte is the one that actually came up with this daddy thing for Trump that, he's just looking at, trying to bring everybody in order and just sucking up to Trump big time. Lots of the European leaders are. Is his commentary here bragging on what Trump did yesterday? Is that just Europe trying to say, hey, we just need to keep you engaged here, and then we'll promise after you're out of office that we'll get up to 5% GDP for our defense spending like you asked, but really we just want to buy time to get you out and keep the war going on? That's kind of what it seems to me, but what's your view?
Well, the globalist elites that run everything, the Sorosistas, as we call them, the Soros-backed political figures like Macron and others, they're the ones that open their borders to millions of people from Africa, the Middle East, and elsewhere to come and flood European countries. Right now, the Europeans are very upset over that. They're not pleased at all with millions and millions of foreigners that absolutely cannot assimilate. If anything, they've shown up to assimilate the Europeans and erase Western civilization in Europe from the map. These people are on borrowed time. Rutte and his friends in London, Paris, and Berlin, Merz and the rest of them, they're about as popular as the plague right now. They're going to be removed from power. One of their ploys to stay in power is to drag us in. If they can drag us in and keep this war going, they can make the argument, and unfortunately, Europeans are even more gullible and easily misled than Americans. And they'll say, oh, yeah, Russia's bad. The Americans are here. They're helping us, and we're going to defeat Russia. That's essential to maintaining their positions in government. It's not going to work. It's absolutely hopeless. But that is what they're all about. We have to come to terms with that reality. So, I think that the number 17 was mentioned during the discussion between President Trump and Rutte, 17 Patriot missiles. How many targets will that take care of? 8 or 9, if they're lucky, 7 or more likely 7 or 8. Every time an incoming missile is targeted to land in your area, you're going to fire 2 missiles at that missile. Now, how many hundreds of missiles need to be fired to put the Patriots out of business? Not very many. How many Patriots do we produce in a year? 660. How many have we got on hand? I don't know, but I can tell you that you'll go through 100 or 200 or 300 Patriot missiles in a couple of days. This is all crazy nonsense. It's not going to change anything, but it keeps the war going, so to say, maintains the fiction that something is happening and NATO is robust and capable. You know, you'll remember years ago, we used to look at the Dutch army, and the Dutch army was not the most robust military establishment in the history of the world. There were times when the Dutch were very good soldiers, but I remember people laughing because in order to stuff their lengthy hair into their helmets, they had to wear hairnets. And I didn't exactly see much discipline in the Dutch units. They were fairly unimpressive. I don't think Rutte is going to mobilize anybody to do anything. I don't see anybody in Europe lining up to be drafted to fight the great war against Russia along the Dnieper River in central Ukraine. I think it's all nonsense.
Okay, so then what is to make of what he said? I think it was about a week ago when he was just almost like fist pounding on the lectern when he said, hey, we got to get ready for a two-front war here. We've got China over in the Indo-Pacific, and they're just waiting, chomping at the bit to get Russia to win over here. And so we've got to be ready to fight in both directions. It's coming, folks, in 3 to 5 to 7 years. That's like today, tomorrow, and next month. We have to, emergency, we got to move forward. What do you make of all that?
Well, I increasingly term this as sort of Anglo-American Israeli narrative, because MI6, the CIA, and the Mossad are all joined at the hip. They all sit around and they concoct these narratives for consumption in the West. You know, Russia's evil, it's on the march. Iran is evil, it has to be destroyed. If we don't destroy Iran, the world as we know it will end. China is behind everything. China is responsible for everything that we don't like. And this narrative works. It's working. It continues to work, unfortunately. But it's not going to last too much longer because everyone's falling apart financially and economically. We've gone through this process of deindustrialization. I mean, when you look at us, I mean, it was Lindsey Graham saying, "Oh, this is great for the economy. We're selling more weapons and munitions to the Europeans that are going to then turn around and donate it, I guess, to the Ukrainians. And this is good for the economy. This is good for jobs." Well, what do we produce? We produce energy. We have an agricultural sector, which I think is underappreciated. But more important, what do we build other than that? Are we building high-end microcircuitry? Are we competitive with Taiwan, Japan, and Korea? No. What are we building then? We're building military equipment. We're building munitions and rockets and so forth. They're not necessarily the best, by the way, based upon what we've seen happen in eastern Ukraine and more recently with Iran. But that's not an economy. You can't sustain yourself as a great power that way. You have to have a manufacturing base. If you have no productivity and from a manufacturing standpoint, you can't be a superpower. It's that simple. So this is all a last gasp attempt on the part of the United States and its allies in Europe to be relevant strategically. It's not going to work. It's not going to last.
And so, look into this so-called security dilemma, where one side makes some moves and some angry rhetoric, whatever, and then the other side says, "All right, well, I got to match that," and then they go up a little bit more, et cetera. What do you believe is going to be the reaction to these kinds of statements? And it's not just Rutte, but it's many. I mean, the Germans are really emphatic about this as well, and so are the British and the French and several others. That when you are Russia or China, the key two on this, when they hear these things, are they just going to say, it's just rhetoric, we don't worry about it? Or will they say, no, we have to take action as though it's going to be real and we have to keep ramping up?
I think the problem in Europe is very similar to the problem here at home. And that is that until war and destruction visits the average American, the average Frenchman, the average Englishman, the average German, the attitude is going to be, well, that's their problem in Berlin. Or if they want to do that, there's nothing I can do about it. I don't have any influence. I have to live my own life. I've got to put bread on the table. I've got to go to work. I can't fix that. Do you understand? That's where I think we in the West are at this point. People are frustrated. Look at all the people who went out and voted for President Trump. Show me what he's doing. He's reneged on virtually everything. We're talking about foreign and defense policy. We haven't even talked about illegal immigration, the utter and complete failure of any attempt to effectively deport people. Tom Homan is talking to people and says, I have no money, I have no resources, I'm the border czar. Well, no kidding. There's no strategy. There's no strategy for anything. Everything is seat of the pants. And that's Donald Trump. It's what he thinks at a given point in time. And the people on the Hill are not focused on anything other than keeping the system running.
Yeah.
Keep the locomotive running. We got to stay on track. Keep the money flowing. Everyone will be fine. Well, at some point, we know the locomotive's not going to run anymore. We're getting closer to that with each passing day. Whether you talk to Nassim Taleb or Peter Schiff or James Rickards or any number of different people, Bessent is doing everything he can to repair the financial disaster that we have on our hands. And I don't think it's going to work. But it doesn't matter. At this point, nothing matters until it happens. So when you get the financial crisis here and things crumble, and suddenly you look out on the street and you say, where are the police? Where are the services? Who's providing this or that? Then you have a crisis that you have to focus on at home. That hasn't happened yet. But I think we're getting closer with each passing day. Nobody talks right now about the criminality that spills into our country thanks to the illegal human trafficking and the illegal border crossers. Nobody talks about Los Angeles, where we saw all of these foreign flags, Mexican, El Salvadoran, 1.2 million estimated illegals in Los Angeles, locking arms with others who are from Latin America in Los Angeles and saying, they're not leaving, we're staying. Well, that's open rebellion. That's open hostility to the American people and the United States government. Who's bringing it up? Oh, no. We have to worry about those Iranians. Let's destroy Iran. Oh, we got to stop the Russians. And those Chinese. Yeah, the Chinese. See all their armies massing on everybody's borders? Of course not. Chinese aren't going to invade anybody. The biggest problem the Chinese have is holding China together. 1.4 billion people.